That night, I was half asleep when I felt the bed shift behind me, warm breath on my neck. And just as I whispered, "You're home early," a hand slid lower, firm, unfamiliar. And that's when I knew it wasn't my wife. It started after she left to take care of her sick sister. The sound of her suitcase wheels dragging down the hallway was the last thing I heard before the door clicked shut. She didn't even say goodbye, just called something over her shoulder about her sister's surgery and the key to the medicine cabinet. Then silence, the kind that lingers too long and settles over a house like dust no one bothers to wipe away. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after she left, fingers wrapped around a lukewarm mug of coffee I had no intention of drinking. She'd be gone for at least a week, maybe longer, depending on how things went. I should have felt relieved, but instead I just felt exposed. Like all the noise she used to bring, the clutter of words, the sighs, the distant looks, had been holding something back. And now with the silence, something else had crept in. It had been years since we were close. Years since our conversations were more than grocery lists or complaints about how I loaded the dishwasher. Intimacy was something we didn't talk about. Her eyes didn't linger, her hands didn't reach, and somewhere along the way, I stopped trying. I'd grown used to the cold. Then Liam called. I hadn't heard his voice in months, and even then, our last conversation had been through gritted teeth. That fight, we both said things we couldn't take back. I never really figured out what broke between us. Maybe it was how I handled things when he came out, or maybe how I didn't handle them at all. But now, he was coming home. Just for a few days, he said. Needed space from his roommate. I didn't ask why. I just said, "Okay." He showed up that evening with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, taller than I remembered, his jaw sharper, calmer somehow. His hair was longer too, falling into his eyes in a way that made him look older, worn, handsome in a way I didn't expect. When he walked in, our eyes met for a second. Then he looked away, like he was measuring what had changed, or maybe what hadn't. We didn't hug. We never really did. He dropped his bag by the stairs and nodded. "Hey, hey," I echoed, unsure what else to say. He settled in like he'd never left, but we barely spoke. Dinner was quiet. He ate in silence, scrolling through his phone between bites. I asked if he was still working at that cafe near campus. He said no. I asked if he had a new job. He shrugged. I didn't press. That night, I stayed up later than usual. The flicker of the TV lit up the room while some late-night rerun buzzed in the background. Liam had gone to bed hours earlier. I told myself I was just winding down, but truthfully, I was listening for footsteps, for the creak of the floorboards upstairs, for the click of his door. Nothing came. Eventually, I forced
myself to bed. The room felt colder without her. I crawled under the covers and stared at the ceiling. My body was heavy, but my mind wouldn't stop. Sleep came slowly, like fog I couldn't quite step into. In the middle of the night, I stirred. It was faint, like a whisper of movement. I could have sworn I felt the mattress dip slightly, like someone leaned in. I opened my eyes, nothing but darkness. I reached across the bed. It was empty, of course it was. She was gone. Still, my heart beat faster than it should have. I pulled the blanket tighter and turned away from the emptiness beside me. The next morning, I brushed it off, probably a dream, or maybe I just missed the feeling of someone next to me. I'd spent too many nights alone in that bed, even when she was home. Liam was already in the kitchen when I came down. He stood shirtless by the window, sipping coffee like he owned the space. Sunlight hit the line of his shoulders, the light sheen of sweat on his neck. He didn't look at me. "There's more coffee if you want," he mumbled. "Thanks," I replied, grabbing a mug and forcing my eyes away. There was something about the way he stood, so casual, so unaware, that made my skin tighten. We moved around each other all day like ghosts. He stayed mostly in his room or out on the porch with his headphones in. I busied myself with tasks that didn't need doing, rearranging tools in the shed, watering plants that were already soaked. I kept telling myself it was just nice to have him home, that's all. But that night it happened again. I was in bed, lights off. eyes closed. The house was still. I heard footsteps, soft, deliberate, somewhere down the hall. Then silence. Then the faintest sound of my door easing open. My body froze, breath caught in my throat. I didn't move, didn't open my eyes. Then, again, that wait. The mattress dipped, slow and careful, like someone crawling in beside me. The scent in the air wasn't hers. It was warmer, masculine. I told myself I was dreaming again. But as the sheet shifted and something warm pressed against my back, I whispered without thinking, "You're home early." Silence. No voice answered. Only breath, shallow, steady. Then the softest brush of a hand against my side. So light, I almost wasn't sure it happened. I didn't turn around. I didn't move. Eventually, the warmth pulled away. The bed lifted. The door creaked shut. I lay there wide awake, heart pounding. It wasn't her. And deep down, I knew who it had been. But I wasn't ready to face that. Not yet. Still, something had changed. The next morning, I moved through the house like a man lost in fog. I couldn't focus. The coffee tasted like ash. The chair at the table felt too cold. I kept replaying the night in my head, together in silence. And Liam came downstairs like nothing had happened. He looked different that morning. A loose white tank top clung to his frame, his hair tousled, phone in hand. When our eyes met, he held the gaze just long enough to make my stomach knot. "Sleep okay?" he asked, voice casual. I nodded, maybe too quickly. "Yeah, fine. You?" He smirked, like he was daring me to say more. "Didn't sleep much." I wanted to ask him, "Did you come into my room last night?" But the words caught like thorns in my throat. If I was wrong, what would that mean? And if I was right? We didn't say much after that. He poured cereal, I stayed quiet. It felt like we were two actors in a play that had forgotten its script. Later that day, I tried calling my wife 4 times before it went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Just stood there with the phone pressed to my ear like it might give me some kind of answer. Her absence no longer felt like freedom. It felt like a countdown. By the time evening came, I still hadn't heard from her. Liam was out on the deck, lounging like someone without a care in the world. I stepped outside with a drink in hand, maybe to reclaim some space. Or maybe just to break the silence. "Nice night," I said. He looked up slowly, then nodded. "It is." I leaned against the railing, eyes fixed on the deepening sky. "You thinking about heading back to your place soon?" He gave a lazy shrug. "Not in a rush." Silence fell between us again, heavy, thicker with every second. Then he added, almost offhand, "Feels good to be back, though. Peaceful." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Then he turned to face me, fully, and the way he looked at me. It wasn't the way a son looks at a father. It was slower, more deliberate. His eyes lingered too long, scanning my face like he was searching for something hidden. My heart slammed in my chest. "You okay?" he asked, voice suddenly gentler. I nodded, gripping my glass. "Just tired." He gave a small, knowing smile. Not amused, something else. Something closer to understanding. That night, I made sure the bedroom door was locked. I checked it twice. But even with that small defense, sleep didn't come. Every creak of the house made my eyes snap open. Every gust of wind against the window felt like a breath on my neck. At one point, I swore I saw the doorknob twitch. I stared at it for an hour, unmoving. Morning came without rest. I looked like hell. And Liam noticed. "You sure you're okay?" he asked, sipping orange juice. "Fine," I said, Evening. He sat beside me on the couch. Not just near me. Close. We were watching something on Netflix. I couldn't tell you what. My brain registered only him. Our knees brushed. Once, then again. And then his thigh rested lightly against mine. He didn't move. Neither did I. I could feel the heat of him through the denim. He leaned back slightly, arm stretched out along the back of the couch. Fingers grazed the cushion, inches from me. I should have moved. I didn't. You ever think about the past? He asked suddenly, eyes still on the screen. I turned to him. What do you mean? Like, how things could have gone if people had acted differently, if we'd said different things. I swallowed. I try not to. He looked at me then, fully, his eyes dark, unreadable. Sometimes I do. I couldn't breathe. Then he stood, said something about taking a shower. The moment shattered. He disappeared upstairs. I sat frozen.
Later, walking past his room, I glanced inside without meaning to. He stood there shirtless, a towel around his waist, hair damp, eyes lowered as he looked in the mirror. Then he saw me, through the reflection, and he didn't look surprised or embarrassed. He just smiled and turned off the light. That night, I checked the lock on my door again and again, but even then I lay awake for hours, listening, waiting, dreading what I'd already started craving. Because whatever this was, it wasn't just in my head anymore. And I didn't know when the waiting became routine, maybe the third night, maybe the fourth, but by then I wasn't locking the door just out of fear. I was locking it to think, to brace myself, to prepare. Because the line between dread and anticipation had blurred into something far more dangerous: curiosity. My wife's calls had grown shorter, colder. When I answered, her voice sounded like it was coming from a different world. She gave brief updates about her sister and ended every call with a distracted, "I love you." I'd stopped saying it back. She didn't seem to notice. Meanwhile, Liam's presence had become heavier. Not louder, just more. He filled every room without speaking. I'd pass him in the hallway and feel the air shift. His scent lingered, woodsy, clean, masculine. It clung to doorknobs, the edge of the couch, even the bathroom towels we now shared without ever speaking of it. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just loneliness playing tricks. But then he stood behind me at the bathroom sink, close, shirtless, the heat of his skin brushing mine as I shaved. I pretended not to notice, pretended not to watch him in the mirror. When he leaned in to rinse his mouth, his shoulder touched mine. Another moment, another accident. Except it didn't feel like an accident. At breakfast, he started looking at me differently. Eyes slow, low, studying. The kind of look that made my pulse skip. He began offering to cook, stayed in the kitchen longer than necessary, used the same towel I did, touched things he didn't need to touch. And then came the question. It was late. Dinner was over, part of a routine we hadn't acknowledged. He cooked. I poured the wine. We didn't talk much anymore, but the silence felt deliberate. He leaned back in his chair, swirling his glass, watching me with unsettling calm. "Do you think you ever really loved her?" I blinked. "Your mother?" He nodded. "Yeah." I hesitated, eyes drifting toward the window. "I used to, but now? I don't know." The words slipped out, too raw, too real. He didn't flinch, just tilted his head slightly. "You don't look at her the way you used to," he said. "You don't even look at her the way you used to look at me." That stopped me cold. I looked across the table, met his gaze. "What's that supposed to mean?" He shrugged, but there was something sharp beneath the surface. Nothing, just an observation. Then he stood and began clearing the plates like he hadn't just split. It's something wide open between us. I sat frozen, heart pounding. Later that night, I lay in bed, scrolling through my phone in the dark. My wife had texted. Surgery went well, staying another week. No warmth, no emotion, just logistics. I turned off the screen and stared at the ceiling, my body exhausted, my mind racing. I don't remember falling asleep, just the moment I woke up. The door creaked open, so softly I almost didn't hear it. The darkness thickened. Then, I felt it. The mattress dipped. Slow, deliberate, sheets shifting. warmth behind me. I didn't move. My breath shallow. A hand slid over my side, gentle, familiar in a way that scared me. I told myself it was her. I needed it to be her. "You're home early," I whispered into the dark, voice trembling with nerves. No answer. The breath against my neck was different, steadier, younger. Then that hand again, gliding over my stomach, fingertips trailing lower. My body reacted before my mind could stop it. My hips shifted. Breath caught in my throat. Lips grazed the back of my neck. Warm, hesitant, wanting. And I knew. This wasn't my wife, but I didn't stop it. I should have. Every rational thought screamed at me to speak, to turn, to end it, but I couldn't, because I didn't want to. It had gone too far. The hand pressed against my chest slid upward, pausing at the hollow of my throat. My heart raced beneath it. Then a voice, barely a whisper, trembling with something unspoken. "I didn't want to wake you." I froze. I knew that voice. Liam. I turned sharply, eyes adjusting to the faint light seeping through the blinds. He was there, shirtless, breathing hard, his eyes wide like he'd been holding this in for far too long. "What are you doing?" My voice cracked, strained under the weight of shock and something dangerously close to desire. "You didn't stop me," he said, quiet but steady. I sat up, my muscles tight. "You shouldn't be here. This is wrong." He didn't move. Just said, "But it's not a no." I couldn't speak. My chest felt like it was caving in. His fingers reached for mine, softly, cautiously, but I pulled away before he could touch me. He didn't look hurt, just patient. "I'm not trying to confuse you," he said, "but I've been confused long enough." Then, without another word, he stood and walked to the door. He paused, hand on the handle. "I won't come back, unless you want me to." And then, he was gone. I sat there in the dark, the silence pressing in like thick water I couldn't breathe through. I didn't sleep, not because I was afraid he might return, but because I was terrified he wouldn't. Because I knew, once this started, there was no going back. The next day passed in a fog. I moved through it like a man underwater, hearing things but not fully there, just muscle memory. Whispering, "You didn't stop me." Liam didn't mention it. He didn't have to. That morning, he walked into the kitchen barefoot, hair still damp from a shower, wearing low-slung joggers and a gray t-shirt that clung just a little too tightly to his chest. He asked if I needed anything from the store, if I wanted the last of the eggs, if I'd seen the news about the blackout up north. All normal questions, all delivered with a false casualness, like we hadn't shared something in the dark that couldn't be undone. I nodded, offered short answers, pretended not to notice the way his eyes lingered or the subtle ways he brushed past me in the narrow spaces of the house. But underneath everything, there was a hum. I felt watched. I felt wanted. I felt wrong. My wife didn't call that day, just sent a short message. "Julie's infection's getting worse. Might stay a few more days. Love you." I didn't reply. I couldn't. The truth was, I hadn't really thought about her in days. She'd become a shape, a fading outline in a photo I no longer looked at. That night, I sat on the couch nursing a drink, pretending to watch something on TV. I heard the stairs creak. I didn't have to look. I knew it was him. Liam had a rhythm now, his presence carried in the silence that followed him into a room. He paused in the doorway. I kept my eyes on the screen, barely breathing. Then, after a long stillness, he walked around the couch and sat down at the far end. Not close, not far. The flicker of the television washed over us, casting shadows on the walls. Then he spoke. "You locked the door last night." His voice was low, steady. I nodded. "Yeah." He hesitated, then asked, "Are you going to lock it again tonight?" I didn't answer right away. My hand tightened around the glass in my palm. "I don't know." Liam stood, turned toward me, something unreadable in his eyes. "If you don't, I'll know what that means." Then he walked upstairs. He didn't wait for my reaction, just left, and I sat there, alone, with the soft hum of the television and the violent rhythm of my heart. I stayed on the couch until long past midnight. I don't remember turning off the TV. I just remember climbing the stairs, slow, hesitant steps. The hallway felt colder. I stood at my bedroom door for a long time, hand on the knob. And then, quietly, deliberately, I stepped inside, shut the door behind me, and left it unlocked. I crawled into bed, nerves buzzing, breath shallow. My eyes adjusted to the dark. For a while, there was nothing, just wind outside and the occasional creak of the house. Then, the door opened. Soft, careful, unmistakable. I didn't turn. Bare feet padded across the carpet. The mattress dipped, slow, deliberate. The warmth of him slid in behind me. His breath, quiet and steady, rose and fell with mine. A hand brushed the edge of my shirt, mine in the dark, wide, vulnerable, burning. I reached up and cupped his face. "I've thought about this," he whispered. "Every night since I left. I didn't think you'd ever let me close again." My fingers slipped into his hair. His breath stuttered against my neck. "I should stop this," I murmured. "But you won't," he said. And he was right. We moved slowly at first. Every touch was cautious, like we might collapse the moment if we pushed too hard. But when our lips met, something inside me gave way. His kiss was soft, but certain, not accidental, not confused. It felt rehearsed, like he'd played this scene in his mind 1,000 times. My hands traced his back as he pressed closer, our legs tangled. His skin was warm, smooth, trembling. His mouth left mine for my neck, then my collarbone, leaving behind trails of heat I couldn't deny. I didn't speak, I couldn't. I just let it happen. Let it unfold like a truth too long buried. He climbed over me. Our bodies pressed close, breaths uneven, the heat between us rising like a tide, and I gave in, completely. I felt all of him, and I welcomed it. In that bed, in that dark, we crossed a line we could never uncross. When it was over, he curled into me, head resting against my chest, arm across my stomach, like he belonged there. I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling. But nothing felt the same anymore, because something in me had shifted. Not guilt, not shame, just the weight of something irreversible, and that was only the beginning. From the knowledge of what I was now, what we were. I walked to the bathroom and stared at my reflection. My eyes looked tired, haunted. My lips were still slightly swollen from his kisses. I pressed cold water to my face, hoping it would wash something away. It didn't. If anything, it made the truth clearer. There was no going back. When I returned to the bedroom, the bed was empty. The sheets were rumpled. His scent still hung in the air. I froze for a second, heart thudding. Then I heard movement downstairs. He was in the kitchen, making coffee like it was any other morning. Like we hadn't shattered the foundation of our lives just hours ago. "Morning," he said without looking up. "Morning," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. He handed me a mug. His fingers brushed mine. I flinched, just slightly. He noticed, but he didn't comment. He leaned back against the counter, sipping slowly. "You okay?" he asked after a moment. I gave a half-hearted nod. "I don't know what I am." He exhaled and set the mug down. "Me neither." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, not tense, just confused, tender, dangerous. I turned away. I couldn't look at him. "This can't happen again." He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He just said, "But it already did." My hands gripped the counter, knuckles white. "You're my son." Liam was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Am I really?" My breath caught. "We haven't spoken like father and son in years," he continued. "You pushed me away long before I left. You didn't try when I came out. You didn't even call me on my birthday last year." I swallowed hard. Shame climbed up my throat. "I was scared," I said, barely more than a whisper. "I didn't know how to handle it." He nodded slowly. "I know. But I needed you then. And I think maybe you needed me too." There was no anger in his voice, no accusation, just the truth. We stood there in silence. The mug in my hand had gone cold. Outside, clouds rolled in. A neighbor's dog barked somewhere in the distance. Ordinary things, mundane sounds, that didn't belong in a moment like this, in the knot we'd tied in the dark. Eventually, Liam stepped past me toward the stairs. "I'm gonna shower," he said. Upstairs. I finally let out the breath I'd been holding since sunrise. He left within the hour. No bags, no goodbye. Just walked out the door like a storm slipping back into the ocean. I didn't follow him. The house was impossibly quiet after that. The hours crawled. Afternoon blurred into evening. I sat by the window for a long time, staring at the sidewalk, the mailbox, watching the sky shift from pale gray to gold, then to nothing. My wife called around 8. I let it ring. No voicemail. What could I say? That I'd betrayed her in a way no one could ever understand. That I'd let someone into our bed. Someone whose name was carved into our family tree. I couldn't. I didn't. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. I sat in the dark with the lamp off and the curtains open, watching the stars flicker in and out behind slow-moving clouds. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. One message, from Liam. If you want the truth, I'll be waiting. Just that. No questions, no pressure. But I felt it like a spark in my chest. The next morning, I got in the car. I didn't pack. I didn't write a note. I just drove. Toward the truth I hadn't wanted. Toward the person I'd never truly known. Toward a future I wasn't sure I was ready for, but could no longer deny. I didn't know where he was staying. He hadn't told me. But I remembered the old apartment near the train station, the one he used to share with that friend he never really talked about. The building with rusted balconies, peeling green paint, like it belonged to another decade. Somehow, I just knew. The parking lot was mostly empty. I sat in the car for 10, maybe 15 minutes. Staring at the second-floor corner unit, curtains slightly parted, a warm yellow glow flickering through. I didn't see him. I didn't need to. I climbed the stairs slowly, hands in my jacket pockets, even though the air was already warm. At the door, I hesitated, knuckles hovering. I knocked once, then again, a pause. Then, it opened. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Hair a mess, shirt clinging like he'd just pulled it on. But his eyes, they were calm, not surprised. Like he'd known I would come, like he'd been waiting. "Hey," he said, voice quiet, like the hallway didn't deserve anything louder. I stepped inside. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and clean laundry, sparse, just a small couch, a table, a few books stacked on the floor, unchanged, familiar. We stood there for a moment, not speaking. Then I asked the one question I hadn't dared to ask before. "Why did you come into my bed that night?" He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees. Because I didn't know how else. Both been broken long before that night. Years of silence, distance, resentment bottled up tight, unspoken things rotting between us. And in some twisted, aching way, we'd reached for something, not just physical, but human. "I don't know who I am anymore," I said. Liam leaned back, head resting against the wall. "Neither do I." The silence came again. But this time, it wasn't cold. It just was. Like a third presence in the room, making space for everything we couldn't say. "I don't regret what we did," he said finally, "but I regret that it's the only way we ever really touched." My chest tightened. "I failed you as a father." He shook his head. "You failed me as a man, and I failed you back." There was no blame in his voice, no heat, just truth. I didn't know what to do with that. I stood, walked to the window. Outside, kids rode their bikes. A woman pushed a stroller with a sagging wheel. Ordinary life, still moving. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know," he said. I turned to face him. "Do you want this? Whatever this is?" He looked at me. "I want honesty. I want connection. I want you in my life. The rest, we figure out." I sat beside him. Close, but not touching. My hands trembled slightly in my lap. "I don't know if I can love you the way you want." He didn't flinch. "Then love me the way you can." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was warm. Healing. A space where no judgment lived. only the ache of two people trying to find each other, in the ruins of what they were supposed to be. He reached out, placed his hand over mine. I didn't pull away. I don't need labels, he whispered. I just need to know I wasn't crazy for feeling what I felt. I looked down at our hands. You weren't. We didn't kiss. We didn't go further. We just sat there, two men holding something fragile and unnamed. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was the beginning. Maybe it was both. As the sun climbed higher, painting the floor in gold, I let my head rest against his shoulder. I'm scared, I said. So am I, he replied. But we're not alone anymore. And somehow, that was enough. After I came home, I kept replaying that night. How it started in silence and ended in something I could never take back. I should have stopped him. I should have said no, but I didn't. And now I can't look at myself the same. I don't know if it was love, or weakness, or something darker we don't have words for. All I know is, we crossed a line, and I can't stop asking myself, what are we now? Tell me, was it a mistake, or was it something more? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I need to know. I'm not alone. And remember, this is not the end. Not yet.